Okay, we will call this agenda priorities meeting to order for May the 15th, and I will ask Councillor Wing to please read the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. The town of Innisfail acknowledges that we are meeting on Treaty 7 territory, the ancestral and traditional territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Kainai, Piikani, and Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina First Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta, Region 3, within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We are grateful for the traditional knowledge keepers and elders who are still with us today and those who have gone before us. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude to those whose territory we reside on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And we'll move into 2.1. Any additions or deletions, CEO Becker?
Yes, please, Mayor Barclay. In camera, 6.3, advice from officials, MGA Section 197.2, Freedom of Information Privacy Act, Section 24.1G, please.
Okay, thank you. Could I please have someone make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended?
I'll make that motion, Mayor Barclay.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Messaros. All in favor? All right, carried. And we'll move on to 3.1 with CEO Becker, Strategic Priorities Update.
So for Mayor and Council's attention, this item will be on all your A&P agendas as a standing item. Gives you a chance to really see the priorities and ask any questions on progress or limitations. We'll come back to you formally each quarter or as required when there's a significant adjustment to the priorities, but it's there just for your visual and for any questions.
Okay, great. Does anyone have any questions about this? If not, please have someone make a motion that we accept it as information.
Mayor Barclay, I'm happy to make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunham. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we'll move on to 3.2, Community Art and Culture Proposed Approach with Director Jenkins.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. So we wanted to start a bit of a conversation and discussion around the public art policy and what the best approach may be in terms of ensuring that we end up with a product and a system that works for all the ideas and things that we're trying to do within that space in the community. So back in early 2022, the town was approached looking for ways to promote and support the beautification of the community through installation of murals on private buildings. This prompted the exploration and drafting of a public art policy that would allow the municipality to invest in public art projects. And through the creation and discussion of that draft policy last fall, along with the consideration of appropriate budget allocations, the complexity and scope of a public art policy and its management by the municipality has emerged. So administration has identified multiple scenarios or situations that ideally we would be equipped to respond to, that a policy would help us with, that we've either come across in the last year or so, or that have come up. So these have ranged from requests for financial support for public art projects that are accessible to the public, so murals being an example of that. Requests for the installation of art pieces in public spaces, possibly for commemorative purposes. So people looking to donate or have pieces of art installed in public places, as well as the receipt of gifts of arts with the expectation of public display. Option for town commissioned art for display within public buildings and public spaces. As we talk about the aquatic center, those types of new buildings and what role art would play in those, as well as temporary art installations and placemaking activities. So in attempting to craft a policy to appropriately address all of the noted scenarios and in discussion with a few different consultants, it suggested that perhaps it would be of most benefit to engage with sort of stakeholders within our art and culture space first and try to really nail down what the vision and the objective of any sort of policy would be. As such, we're looking to propose a series of facilitated community discussions that would be held with various stakeholders in the art and culture space in the community. These sessions would explore objectives and how the municipality can best support art and culture. These discussions would not only help inform a public art policy, but also reviews planned for our community grant policy criteria and other related initiatives. So that's been one of the conversations as well. The Community Services Standing Committee, a large number of their requests, particularly this year, have been associated with mural installations and other art projects. And I think some questions and uncertainty from the committee as well as to, who decides where and what are we trying to work towards even with some of these projects. So the proposed session stakeholders could include council, administration, local artists, the art club, local art and music teachers, Innisfail Town Theatre, local event organizers, Historical Village, and the public at large. This would represent a preliminary step to start a dialogue and to help really create sort of a vision for art and culture before we really dive in and try to set a policy and create a new committee and create some of these structures without having that clear vision to provide to that committee or to administration as to what we're trying to achieve. So the 2023 operating budget does include $10,000 towards the creation or implementation of the public art policy. We're looking at an initial expenditure. Don't think it will cost $5,000 to have 2 to 4 is my probably hope of facilitated meetings with stakeholders and the associated sort of hospitality with that to help define that vision, goals and objectives for art and culture activities in the community, as well as what are the best ways that the municipality can be active in that space. So really just looking for any input from council and acknowledgement that that's how we would move forward.
Okay, thank you, Director Jenkins. Well, I would like to see Indigenous representation added to the list of consultation, please. Whether we do that through the Red Deer Friendship Society or whoever, but certainly some feedback from there. Any comments? Councillor Dunham?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay, through Director Jenkins. I think this is great. I mean, I know that we kind of stalled on where we were going with it and kind of put it on the back burner. I think this is a really good way to reach out to the community because really it's the community at large that is a big part of this. And it would be a shame that we didn't sort of focus what we were going to do and put some guidelines in place to make sure that we just don't end up with a hodgepodge out there. Yeah, I look forward to it. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Yes, I am very supportive of this. I love the idea of having some community discussions, and certainly having the town at the table is important. I think, just broadly speaking, my experience with public art policy is they're not just solely about the financial impact to our budget. They include leadership and the desire to impact and build the arts and culture as a sector in our community and as a thriving part of our local economy. So certainly I would like to see the policy that includes how we maintain and how we support, but also how we lend our leadership to the sector. So I completely support this. Thank you.
Councillor Messaros?
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Yeah, I agree with what my councillor colleagues have said, and I think it's a great idea to bring community involvement in. I'm wondering, would you start, I might be getting into the details a little bit too much, but I'm thinking about the kind of feedback that we would be wanting to get from participants and whether it would be kind of attached to what we've already started with our public policy, or is it kind of broader and more general than that, like kind of trying to understand what it is that they have to say in a bigger way, but not necessarily attached to what we've already got.
Yeah, in my mind, we're going to back up. We won't start with the policy. It will be more around that art and culture. What's the value? What are the ideas in the community? And build it from there. And try to come up with the best policy that's going to support that, as opposed to kind of going backwards.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And then some of the ideas that you've got down here already, where you've the numbers 1 to 5, would those be sort of topics that would be put out there for suggestions or conversation about those topics? Or would we be looking to expand on that list of topics? Or am I kind of going down a rabbit hole that you haven't been down yet?
Yeah, I don't think we've quite gone that specific yet. I think at this point, really trying to set that vision and the higher level, and then we can figure out some of the mechanics of the best ways to adapt to that. You know, and creating a bit more of a vision in the community as to where and what we want, if there's, what the different potential is, and how we allow those groups, because we do have grassroots folks doing things already. So as opposed to trying to reinvent the wheel, how do we support those things in a way that's, that works for everyone?
Fantastic, thank you.
Councillor Bates?
I agree with this approach wholeheartedly. Is there any resource that you could check with at the school at all to get some youth component? Just throwing that out there. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll certainly reach out to the schools. I think it's important if we can get the teachers for sure, but if they can bring some youth involvement, or maybe we have one of these sessions in the school and that's the primary focus of the conversation.
I also think, Director Jenkins, like there's a couple of ways to go. We've kind of looked at the town supporting this, but you could also have a, you know, depending on what comes out of this, a separate entity. So you have a separate nonprofit. And yes, there's a policy, because we need a policy to ensure that, you know, the appropriateness and everything else. But at the same time, that nonprofit is raising their own funds and doing their own thing, as opposed to it kind of coming back on the town and the capacity and whatnot. And, you know, and also if the town does it, we also have to make sure that it's, you know, balancing with our procurement policies and that kind of thing, right? Because, I mean, sometimes these things can get expensive, and we're going to run into certain procurement policies that we have to abide by.
For sure.
That isn't necessarily supporting local, right? If depending on the price. So there's that to consider, and so people have an understanding of that as well. Yeah. Anything else? Can just have somebody please make a motion that we accept this report as information. Councillor Wing?
Yes, Mayor Barclay, I would move that council accept the report as information.
Perfect, thank you. All in favor? Okay, unanimous, thank you. And we will move on to 3.3 with Director Jenkins as well.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Barclay. Just wanted to provide an update to council. As I was appointed to the AB Muni's Sustainability and Environment Committee last fall, I recently attended my third meeting and kind of feel like I know what's going on a little bit now. So, just want to give an update, and if there's any questions. So the current priorities of that committee are supporting the implementation of the Extender Producer Responsibility Program and with the provision of oversight to the EPR working group. So there's been a group set up with representatives from industry that are working on the policy with Alberta Recycling for the EPR. We've also been working to review and develop existing water policies, so that's been a full review, and there will be a presentation at your fall convention of new water principles. The way the resolutions work for AB Munis is they expire after a period of time, so there were a whole bunch of water policies that had come to the expiration of their time. They aren't necessarily no longer valid, but changing those into sort of water principles that can be agreed upon for the longer term. The group also advocates for streamlining government relations related to water, wastewater, and brownfield developments and other ways to reduce the regulatory burden on municipalities, monitor climate change policies and promote climate change adaptation and mitigation, oversee the AB Muni's Environment Award, and move forward various resolutions coming from the municipalities at their conventions. So I'd already mentioned the outdated water policies. At your summer leader caucuses that are in June, I believe, there will be some engagement on those water principles with presentation at the fall convention. Water conservation. So the committee has received presentations from the city of Edmonton and Calgary on their respective water conservation work over the past number of decades. The reports were delivered as part of the province's performance monitoring with respect to the 2003 Water for Life goals. So there were goals set in that document that AB Muni supported with respect to reducing per capita water usage as well as unaccounted water within systems. The water per capita water usage targets were met successfully. The unaccounted water has not, so that's one of the things the committee is looking to look at further in terms of defining how various municipalities define that term and how they can look to reduce sort of unaccounted water that gets lost in the system. We've also had presentations about the 2020 building code transition to meet Canada's green building strategy the requirement for provincial commitment to the implementation of the 2020 model codes. So the federal government has created the model codes with the intent to meet their green building strategy objectives. Alberta to date has not committed to adopting those codes. There are some municipalities that would like to enact either these codes or even additional requirements for energy efficiency, which currently isn't allowed in Alberta. So there's some work going there as well as some pressure to move towards those codes. And we've had the conversation even with the Aquatic Center as well as to what code is going to be in effect when the time comes to look at that. I've been named to the Municipal Environmental Award Nomination Committee, so that will be in July, I guess, those applications come in. There's been some changes to the stormwater reuse regulation, which many municipalities were quite interested in, which allows the reuse for non-potable purposes of water from stormwater ponds up to a certain volume without requiring a water license through Alberta Environment, so reducing some of the red tape there. There's been some lobbying with respect to the Natural Resources Conservation Board, particularly around confined feeding operations. And so typically there's requirements for adjacent landowners to a certain extent to be notified. However, some municipalities downstream have not been able to participate in these appeals or these applications because they're not deemed an affected landowner because they're not close enough. However, they do have concerns due to their being downstream from these operations. So there's some more work to be done there. And then lots of work on the education part for extended producer responsibility. There was talk about potentially the creation of a video or something for council members to understand as they're going to be looking to make decisions in the fall about how they participate in that transition.
Thanks, Director Jenkins. Lots of information. No conversation around waste. No conversation around waste here at this committee?
I've talked about waste to energy there,
Yeah.
but the focus to date has really been on water at this point, which has been interesting. We have representatives from Okotoks, Canmore, the south, and we also have representatives from the north, and it's very interesting the different perspectives on water, where one, they're talking about scarcity in the south. In the north, they're talking about how their water commissions can make money because they don't have enough users on their systems. So,
yeah, interesting. Yeah. So the unaccounted water, like that would be like the infiltration that we get into our system, and
a certain amount of that unmetered
okay.
users. So there's definitely some conversation around that infiltration, where it's going to be lost. What is an acceptable sort of baseline. There's always going to be some loss in the system. But there were a lot of statistics from various municipalities that had reported for it, and the numbers were all over the place. So it was difficult, or the opinion was that you weren't comparing the same thing in every community, that a lot of it might just be unmetered water in some areas that they are giving away for free.
And EPR, when does like that officially launch? And
Currently, the timeline is, it wouldn't launch till 2025, but that a determination from municipalities would be this fall is when they would be hoping for the decision as to whether you're taking the responsibility as the municipality or you're going to negotiate with a waste collector, essentially.
so can you explain that to me, what you mean by that?
So my general understanding is that the producers are now are going to be responsible for the costs. So the option the municipality has is we have the option to basically itemize all our current costs associated with recycling. So we would come up with a cost for what we pay to E360, administration, those types of things. We would then negotiate with the broker company to give us, or to provide us with an amount of money to offset, and my understanding is there will be a negotiation. It won't just be, this is our number and they will pay, but because everybody's gonna come in across different levels, right? We're 8,000 people and our number might be one thing, so they'll have to come up with some sort of a system there. The other option is the municipality takes on that responsibility, but then I believe we're trying to market our plastics and work through the rest of the system. Essentially, that coming up with the costs is what the best advice is. They've said in order to be ready, know what your costs are associated with your residential recycling to date.
Okay, well, thank you. And I'm also, oh, go ahead, Councillor Bates, no, or was it Councillor Harrison? Sorry. I didn't see.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Barclay, through to Director Jenkins. Just a couple questions. The composition of the committee, who sits on the committee? Strictly municipalities. And the second thing is, are you linked in, or is that committee linked in to the different commissions that are out there? Because I think just about all across the province there's representations from that. So are you hearing from the commissions? Because I know there's lots of expertise.
Yes, and AB Munis itself sits on the Alberta Water Council and a lot of those
okay.
different, Alberta Recycling, those different organizations themselves. The composition of the committee, I will tell you because I can never remember. I'm the only municipal employee on the committee. The CAO from Black Diamond was on there when I first got on, but due to their dissolution amalgamation, isn't. I will tell you who's on here. All the rest are mayors or councillors from the various municipalities. So we have Angela Duncan from the Village of Alberta Beach, Tanya Thorne from the town of Okotoks, Richard Warnock from the town of Sundre, Curtis Snell, town of Westlock, Ashley Salvador, city of Edmonton, Tina Petro, city of Airdrie, Tina Foubert, town of Canmore, Ida Edwards, town of Athabasca, and myself.
Thank you.
I got 2 or 3 questions. So I'll just say as a member of the Mountain View Water Commission, I haven't heard of any connection, but the Water Commission, of course, is just a narrow line of the supply of fresh water versus all of the other things you're talking about, stormwaters and everything else. So I'm just saying I haven't heard it yet through there. But it also occurred to me that there should be a connection, I think, from that committee to MUG, Red Deer Municipal User Group. I'm not sure what that would look like, and I don't know, maybe our representative, Councillor Harrison, could, at the next meeting, which I think is this week, I'm not even sure, get them pulling from the other side too, to be connected. And then the last question, and more of a question, those were two suggestions. The EPR, so that seems to tie in date-wise with the question I had when we saw in the paper that recycling was going to be subsidized to those communities that had invested in recycling. So that does seem to tie that 2025, so we're all still hopeful that
Yeah.
we're going to get some subsidy.
And
Similar-
go ahead, sorry. My understanding with the letter that came from Lacombe wanting to be included is that subsidy or how the program is going to work was towards municipalities that already had curbside recycling streams in place. So I think their challenge in Lacombe is that they haven't had curbside, so
Right.
how are they gonna transition in order to offer that to their residents?
But theoretically, we
Yeah.
should have our foot in the door there, right?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, okay, thank you.
I'm also curious, Director Jenkins, the Municipal Environmental Award, that's through Alberta Munis, I assume,
Yes.
the awards. I'm wondering if we collectively should take a look at the awards that are available and maybe see what Innisfail could apply for, because we, tend to be kind of maybe a bit biased, but
Modest.
leaders in certain areas, so,
I can tell you what the categories are. if you
yeah, I
want.
think just saw it the other day. I think an email came through from Alberta Munis, and
If I get to
but
the end.
maybe we could leave that to administration to look at, and you guys can have a discussion, and we could, maybe some of those council would need to apply, or it comes from our end as opposed to your end, but we could chat about that going forward.
Yeah.
Okay, any more questions? No? Well, please have somebody make a motion to accept the report as information then, please. Councillor Bates.
Sure, I'll make that motion that we accept this for information.
Okay, thank you. All in favor? Perfect, thank you. And we will move into 4.1, the correspondence. I did mention that we get a lot of requests to go to parades and whatnot in kind of the end of June and stuff, and there's so many conflicting things going on in June, so I did speak with Tom Reinhardt on the weekend and suggested maybe we can talk about it another time, but maybe we could invite other mayors, councils, whatever, to participate in the soapbox derby in July, because it would be something totally different. Then maybe there wouldn't be so much conflict around all the events, and so.
I see a challenge, a mayor's challenge.
Well, that's what I was, exactly, you got it. I don't know if I want to take on Al House or the mayors, but anyway, I think Al would be number one, but yeah, so anyway, he did say they had, what did he said they did have a larger soapbox cards to use. I thought, well, thank you, Tom. Anyway, we'll talk about that further, so. And I understand there's a couple of RCMP members potentially up and fighting fires or protecting municipalities, I guess. So thank you for that service. I'll just have somebody please make a motion that we accept the correspondence as information.
Mayor Barclay will make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Dunham. All in favor? Okay, carried. And we'll go to roundtable, and we'll begin with Councillor Dunham today.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Council-wise, it was a slow week for me last week. I did miss, unfortunately, a couple of outings that we were planning. I'm glad that the Green and Clean got rescheduled for this week, because barring staffing issues this week, I'll be able to attend that. But yeah, this week, once again, it's looking slow except for a couple little things.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harrison.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Last week, I attended two business visitations, one at the Innisfail auction market, and it's been a number of years since I've been through the auction market. There's been some improvements, and it's a real addition to our community. They do a lot in Innisfail. And then in the afternoon, I attended the food bank, took a tour there, and the ladies were gracious enough to show us around, and I'll tell you, they just do a fantastic job in Innisfail, and we can't afford to lose them. Then on Sunday, I got over to the fish release. The times were a little bit funny, but I understand that the fish, they don't work on a clock. The time was set for 9:30. The fish got there at 9, and because they heat up or something in the tank, it was quite interesting. But that went off, and I can say that we had quite a crowd there, way more than what we had last year. So there's a real interest. I saw some pictures of a trout that was caught here about 3 or 4 days ago by a young man. He goes there fishing every evening, and it was about a 14-inch rainbow trout. Yeah. Well, it grows every time you, that's a fisherman, right? But it's somewhere in that 14-inch, so they are overwintering, so which is good to see, so. Thursday, and I also attended the barbecue, and yeah, CAO Becker, you make great hot dogs. Yeah, on Friday evening. That was well attended too. I was pretty pleased. And good point, Councillor Bates. We do have our RD Mug meeting on Thursday coming up, and I will be going to Drumheller, the first one that I'm going to be face-to-face in a long time. So I will certainly bring up what we've talked about on the Community and Environmental Sustainability Committee. Because I agree that there is quite a link there, or should be quite a link, because water is pretty valuable, and it's even getting more valuable. So that's about it. Thank you, Mayor Barclay.
Thank you. Councillor Wing.
Thanks, Mayor Barclay. Yeah, it was a busy week last week. I attended the RCMP Town Hall last Tuesday. I really enjoyed the information booths that provided a broader picture of our community service relative to our safe community. So would always love to see more people come, especially with all the things that are going on in town now. But we'll keep plugging away at it and hope that people start to participate a little bit more. The Chamber of Commerce Board met last Wednesday. I enjoyed the Auction Mart business visit and the Innisfail Food Bank tour last Thursday. Hadn't ever been to the food bank, and it had been a long time since I'd been at the Auction Mart too, even though they're just a couple doors down from my house. So very enjoyable. CAO Becker and I met with Jerome Morgan of Innovate Calgary. We've had a couple of conversations that council is aware with that organization. Specifically, we talked about 2 programs, the Elevate IP program and the Rural Pitch Competition relative to innovation and the energy transition. So we'll be keeping in touch with all of you around what that looks like, some good sort of lunch and learn opportunities perhaps, or even a social evening. Also attended the Centennial Park Barbecue on Friday, and this week coming up tomorrow we have the Municipal Development Advisory Committee meeting. The Provincial Election Forum is tomorrow evening at the Legion at 7 o'clock. Parkland Regional Library System Board is on Thursday, as well as the Innisfail Interagency Network meeting.
Perfect. Thank you. And Councillor Bates.
Okay, excuse me. So I also missed or postponed the Green and Clean due to the small shower we had. I wish we'd gotten some decent rain, but I'm going to make arrangements with Councillor Messaros to go a little bit early this week and still participate and hand an area off that you guys won't have to look at. I did go to the RCMP Town Hall. I think the agencies being there ahead of time with their tables, I think that was great. It kind of drew more interest to the whole thing, and it made it more, just more complete. I visited the Auction Mart as well, and that's a bit of a flashback for me. I grew up with cattle, sheep, and chickens, and actually still had cattle to sell up to 15 years ago. Not here, but did sell them. I helped set up at Centennial and passed the hot dog cooking off to CAO Becker. And then I went on to my cultural event of the week, which was Joy's School of Dance recital with her graduation of 11 girls, which that's more than I've been going there for quite often, but 11 grads, one of which was my granddaughter. So, and she's got a little enticement of a scholarship in California for, it's going to be a little vacation for them anyway. That was great. This week I have MDP, and I will attend the provincial candidates forum and interagency and AFL on Thursday. I think that, I also went to the fish release. It was great. I did hear Tom Reinhardt say that he plans next year to create a bit of a trough that has an open, so people can see it better, because it's kind of going down an enclosed tube right now that it happens pretty quickly and you don't see too much. But so make it bigger and better. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Messaros.
Thank you, Mayor Barclay. Yeah, it was a busy week for me too, with a number of events that my colleagues have already mentioned. So the RCMP Town Hall, it seems like it's gaining momentum, and the organization around it is just getting better and better and better. It was awesome to be there. The food bank tour, the barbecue at Centennial Park, and the fish release on Sunday. Yeah, that was fun. Green and Clean will go for on Wednesday this week, and the candidates debate, a provincial election forum. And hopefully if, well, it's getting a little bit ahead of things, but if WestJet doesn't go on strike, I'll be in Toronto the following week on May 23rd, so I'll be Zooming into that meeting on the Tuesday. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, attended the RCMP Town Hall. Also, maybe Vanessa or Juanita, I don't know if you can dig out some, maybe the most recent victim services information that but I think there was a letter in the correspondence, must be a while ago now, but because what I heard that evening was a little bit different than maybe what I heard at Alberta Municipality, so it's no rush, but would like to see that information again, please. We traveled to CO Becker, and I went to Calgary last week and met with the delegation at Calgary City Hall with Waste to Energy, and had a business visit, of course, at the Innisfail Auction Mart. That was a lot of fun to catch up there. And CO Becker and I met with Principal Chris Adamson at the Innisfail High School this past week as well. Lots of great things taking place at the high school, and of course they've got the career fair there tomorrow, and then May 31st they have the healthcare career day, and seems to be somewhat of a focus for them, the healthcare piece, so that's really good news. The food bank tour, that food bank has been in operation since 1983, and a big shout out to Ann Vanderham, who has been volunteering there since 1986. So that's pretty cool. And then had the barbecue down at Centennial Park on Friday. I don't know, I heard that CO Becker wasn't doing that much myself, but I don't know. Maybe that was just a rumor. He was just kind of standing there. Somebody else was doing the cooking, but anyway, that's what I heard. And then went to the fish release Sunday morning. That's always lots of fun to see that. So other than that, I think we will now move into closed camera. If somebody could please make a motion to go in camera. Councillor Dunham?
Mayor Barclay, I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, all in favor? Perfect, thank you.